Okay, let's talk about the Immaculate Conception. You've definitely heard the term, but there's a really good chance that what you think it means isn't quite right. Today, we're going to unpack this whole thing because once you get it, it reveals something absolutely incredible about grace, salvation, and the very nature of God. So, every year on December 8th, this is a huge celebration in the church. But for a belief that's so central, it's kind of wild how many people get the main idea completely wrong. So before we can even get into what it is, we have to be crystal clear on what it's not. And here it is. This is the big mix-up right here. Most people hear Immaculate Conception and immediately think it's about Jesus, but it's not. It's about the conception of Mary herself in the womb of her mother, St. Anne. Now, these two events are totally related, of course, but the Immaculate Conception is all about the mother, not the son. All right, so with that common error out of the way, what does the doctrine actually say about Mary's conception? Let's get into the official teaching. The key is all in the wording here. It talks about a unique grace. And get this, the word is preserved, not cleansed. This wasn't something that happened later in her life. The teaching is that she was protected from original sin from the very, very first moment she existed. It wasn't something she earned. It was a one-of-a-kind preventative gift from God. So the doctrine itself points back to that one specific moment, St. Anne conceiving Mary. What's really interesting, though, is that while this belief is ancient, it wasn't formally defined as, official dogma until 1854 by Pope Pius IX. And that's what really solidified December 8th as the day the Church officially celebrates it every single year. Okay, but this raises a huge question, right? If Mary was preserved from sin, how does that even work? This is where we get into the really cool theological how and why, which is absolutely key to understanding what this whole belief is really about. And this is the logical paradox, isn't it? It's a real head-scratcher. If all salvation comes from Jesus' death and resurrection, how could Mary be redeemed before that event even took place? It feels like it breaks the rules of time. The theological answer is this amazing concept called prevenient grace, which literally means grace that comes beforehand. The idea is that God, who exists outside of our normal linear time, took the merits of Christ's future sacrifice and applied them to Mary way back at the moment of her conception. It was a totally proactive move to get her ready for her incredible role. You can kind of picture it like this. You've got the future event, right? Christ's victory on the cross. Then you have the divine action, God, who isn't bound by past, present, or future. And the result? He reaches back, in a sense, and applies that saving grace to Mary right at the very start of her life. And this part is so important. This doesn't mean she didn't need a savior. Oh no, it's the exact opposite. Catholic theology sees this as the most perfect form of redemption possible. Mary is seen as the very first and greatest fruit of what Jesus did. She was saved in a more profound and complete way than anyone else. So that explains the how, but it still leaves us with the why. Why was this unique preservation considered so absolutely necessary? Well, the answer is all about Mary's essential role in the entire story of salvation. Theologians draw this incredible parallel. You have the first Eve in the Garden of Eden. Her no to God's plan introduced disobedience and fractured our relationship with him. But then you have Mary, the new Eve. Because she was completely free from sin, her will wasn't clouded. She could give a pure, total yes to God. Her obedience begins to untie the knot of Eve's disobedience, kicking off a whole new creation. And here's another amazing analogy. Think about the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament. It was built from the purest, most precious materials because it had to hold the very presence of God, the stone tablets. The logic here is pretty similar. For God himself to become human, a perfectly pure vessel was needed. Mary becomes the new ark, a sacred dwelling place, worthy to carry God himself. It shows that the incarnation wasn't just a random event, it was meticulously prepared. This is all just fascinating theology, but let's bring it home. What does it actually mean for us today? Let's zoom out and look at the spiritual hope that this doctrine really offers to people. When you get right down to it, Mary is presented as this profound sign of hope. She's living proof that God's grace is way more powerful than sin. In her, believers see a model of what humanity was always meant to be, fully alive and in perfect relationship with God. Her life is like a portrait of God's generous, proactive love and a real, tangible promise of our own ultimate destiny. And if we boil it all down to just one core truth, it's this. The Immaculate Conception isn't really just about Mary, it's about the kind of God it reveals. Not a God who just reacts, fixing things after they break. This is a God who is proactive, who prepares and sanctifies and heals us before we even realize we're wounded. So this doctrine, it's not just a story about Mary. It's a story about a God of divine initiative, a God who is constantly preparing the way forward out of a totally overabundant love. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. If that's the nature of God's love, what does that say about the ultimate potential for every single one of us?